this is a shit idea. Nobody likes it. We have no demand for this product. Our prototypes aren't going that well. And that night, I remember getting dinner with some alumni actually from the Cube who'd come to visit, and some current members of the Cube, and they basically said, yeah, this is the night you decide whether this is the thing you're going to go all in on or you're moving on to mess around with your next project. That was the last night that I feel like I had a choice, which is why it was so scary, because when you still have a choice, you're like, oh no, do I eject or not? And after that, I removed the ejection handles. I'm like, all right, we're riding this thing into the ground no matter what happens.
Hey everyone, I'm Arjun, and welcome to the 6th episode of My First Sale, the podcast where I take you under the hood to see what all you need to do to start your own e-commerce business. We're going to hear from people who are right in the thick of it, and I'm honored to welcome my 6th guest to the show, Kasper Kubica.
Thank you so much for being here. Just to give you an idea of what the purpose of the podcast is, it's pretty much to give people an idea of how to start their business. You know, a lot of times we hear from people who are these huge billionaires running massive companies, and that's not very practical to hear about that kind of stuff. It's inspirational sometimes, but it's not actually helpful to know how to get from where you are to that next step. So I wanted to go around and interview people who I thought were doing a really great job with their businesses. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad you fell for that looking at our company. But no, very, very honored to be here. I appreciate you asking me to be on the show.
Yeah, and if you want to start by just introducing yourself and talking a bit about what your business does.
Yeah, so I'm Kasper Kubica. I am the co-founder of Carpe. We basically make sweat solutions for all over the body. So we started with sweaty hands. My co-founder David and I had sweaty hands, and we said, why isn't there an underarm antiperspirant but for hands? So we made one. And since then, we've brought it into sweaty feet, actually sweaty underarms, the most common problem. And now face, forehead, breasts, thighs, we're really trying to address excessive sweating in a convenient, accessible, effective way, no matter where, why, or how it occurs.
Very cool. Very cool. You mentioned a lot of different parts of the body there. I think, as you mentioned, probably the place that is most conventionally thought of as the sweat trapping area that people actually do address is probably underarm. Right. And the fact that you guys are addressing all these different places. You mentioned hands, you mentioned feet, you mentioned face, you mentioned breasts, thighs, like a lot of different places. How did you think that you would need to start addressing something else?
I think these other places beyond the hands is sort of the stage that we're at right now, which isn't really early days anymore. I mean, we're now selling products nationwide in Target and CVS. We're among the top selling antiperspirants in Amazon, so it's a really, really cool position to be in, and it's thanks to those stores taking a chance on us. So we really appreciate that. But it's been a slow growth to there over the past 5 years since we started selling in the summer of 2015 on Amazon and on our website, and that was just the hand antiperspirant, where basically David and I had sweaty hands, and we said, let's make a simple solution for sweaty hands, and it took us about a year and about 60 prototypes, but at the end of that, we had a product that we really liked, that the people we were testing it with really liked, and so we, with the help of some angel investors in the area, because unfortunately this antiperspirants being an OTC drug, you have to work with contract manufacturers with a significant minimum batch size, just because of all the paperwork they have to do for every production run. We needed a tiny bit of seed capital. We had nothing to get started, and Bootstrap Advisors in Durham, Ben, Jay, and Chris, they helped us out, and they helped us launch on Amazon that summer, and that's really where it all began.
Oh my God! Wow, there's so many different parts I want to dive into here, but you mentioned 60 prototypes. How do you even build the first prototype for this? How do you say, okay, I want to go out there and create I wouldn't even know where to start with a lotion.
So interestingly enough, a lot of so this is formulation chemistry. It's kind of like cooking. It's, not the hardest thing in the world. It's not coming up with novel ingredients. It's basically mixing decently common ingredients together. There's a lot that can go wrong, and there's a lot of nuance to it, but David and I both had science backgrounds. We were also at the time working with another chemistry student at UNC, Chris Jenks, and the three of us basically were getting together in a dorm room and, really reading online how to make some basic formulations. There's all these people on Etsy, etc., making all these lotions, so there's a pretty good literature base for how to get started. And we were actually looking also at some expired patents as to what could work in a sort of non-greasy, quick drying, almost dry feeling lotion. And from there, we started messing with some different ingredients. We actually reached out to some ingredient suppliers and used titles that would imply that we were part of a much bigger company, and this was a small project for a big company, not a couple college students who didn't know what they were doing. And these ingredient suppliers were really great. They actually started sending us ingredients to try because they knew that if this stuff works out and this product actually succeeds, we're going to be ordering a lot from them. Yeah. And that's what happened. So I think they took a good bet. I don't know if they would have taken that bet if they knew immediately who we were, but by the time we'd really started getting to know each other, I think they realized, okay, these guys have some motivation here, have some hustle, so maybe they'll pull something off.
Wow, that's a really cool story.
Yeah.
When you're building this, you mentioned that you had sweaty hands personally, both you and David, your co-founder, and you thought, okay, let's try to build something to fix this. Did you look to see out there had you tried to find other stuff and you weren't able to?
We had, yeah. So that's a great part of the story, actually. When David and I started talking about this, he was saying, I've been to dermatologists about this. They say that there's nothing. I say, no. There's stuff online. I was skeptical that there was that much of a market for it, actually, because it wasn't something you could find in stores. So I said, this probably isn't that big of a need for that many people, even though I would totally use a product like this. But we looked online. And sure enough, there were a lot of hand antiperspirants, and so we bought them and we tried them, and they were all really greasy. And basically, to kind of really dumb it down, a lot of the way the OTC topical industry works, so products with active ingredients like antiperspirants, like anti-acne creams, etc., work is that a lot of companies just go to a pretty basic formulation lab and say, take this active ingredient and put it in a form that feels okay, like a lotion, like a cream. They don't really look at those inactive ingredients, even though the inactive ingredients are oftentimes what make or break the product. And in the case of these hand antiperspirants that we were buying online, these companies had neglected the inactives completely. They were just using really greasy lotions. They were putting some aluminum active salts in it, some antiperspirant salts. And they were expecting it to work, and the antiperspirant effect was probably there, but if you're putting it on and it's so greasy, it's basically the feeling itself is making your hands sweat more, you're not going to have an effective product. So we started from a very basic basic premise after trying these products, which was that if we could make a delivery vehicle, if we could make a lotion that wasn't greasy, that was almost drying, that left this dry feeling on your hands, and we could deliver the antiperspirant with that, then we might be onto something. So that's really where we started formulating from. And with those 60 prototypes, we were literally just putting them on, putting gloves on. We put it on one hand, put latex gloves on both hands, and watch scary videos on YouTube just to make our hands as sweaty as possible. We'd say, all right, how well is this working? And that's really how we got to the point of something that we were ready to launch.
That's crazy. I just can't even imagine, why would they build products meant to stop sweaty hands that still made them greasy? That just makes no sense.
I don't think they were tested very well. And I think that's one thing that we try to make very central in our philosophy is always with new products, just testing them out with as many people as possible while they're still in the formulation phase. And I think that, can carry broadly to a lot of companies. I think with a lot of companies, particularly tech companies, you have the blessing of being able to constantly iterate on products. So you can put it out there in the market, start getting real user feedback, and build off that. Because we have these regulatory lock-ins with it being an OTC product, and it's very, very difficult to change the formula. We have to do all this stability testing. We have to do active ingredient assays, etc. if we change the formula at all. We can't really change the formula once it's on the market, so we have to do all of this feedback gathering while it's still in the development phase.
So once it's out there, it's done. That's the product.
I mean, we could change it, but it would be we'd probably have to basically pull back everything we have out there. Or probably simpler would be to launch a version 2.0. Yeah, exactly. We're in a peculiar industry, especially with the OTC drugs thing. I think even in most cosmetics, you have a much easier time of it. I know Moise Ali, the founder of Native, was saying in another podcast that I was listening to recently that he would basically A/B test formulas of the same product as he was shipping them out to customers who were buying them on his website. Because you can do that with a cosmetic like a deodorant. Most of our products are OTC drugs. They're antiperspirants, so we can't really do that. We do now have these sweat-absorbing products which aren't OTC, which aren't antiperspirants, and that's kind of tying back to something you brought up earlier, which is this wide variety of products we have, as the hand products started doing well, we just started hearing from more and more of our customers who had sweating in other parts of the body, and they said, nobody's really making good products to address my sweating on my thighs, on my breasts, on my face. Can you guys make something? And that's how we got to developing those products.
Wow. And so are the products that, I guess, there's maybe different oils, or what differs the products between different parts of the body?
Yeah. So the antiperspirants all started with the same formula, actually. We made it for the hands, and then people were saying, I'm using this on my feet. And we said, okay, it's for the hands and feet. And people said, that's gross. Like, seriously, we changed it. People started saying, like, this, I'm not going to use the same thing on my hands and feet. We said, okay, I guess we'll label them separately. And so we label them separately. But it is, in case anybody's curious, the hand and the foot is the same formula. The underarm, actually, we just happened to do some underarm efficacy testing on this same formula and found that it's an insanely effective antiperspirant. Yeah. It's kind of hard to make the hands stop sweating. So if you made something that works on the hands, it's going to work pretty well on the underarms. And so we just found an applicator that works quite well on the underarms. That was a very long process, but the underarm product, same formula as well. It's just it's a really good underarm antiperspirant. Some people have told us that they've spent their entire lives looking for an underarm antiperspirant that works for them, and this is the first one that actually does it, which you'd think in a developed industry like this, where, there's been antiperspirants for decades and all sorts of brands, there'd be something for everyone, but there really still isn't. There's all sorts of possibility for innovation and all sorts of pain points that are out there that even in these well-developed industries that we're not seeing.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And okay, just to clarify for any listeners out there, when you say OTC, the phrase you mean is over-the-counter. Right?
Correct. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that. So over-the-counter drugs, I can get into the whole regulatory of that, but I won't.
So I guess maybe just at a broad level, what makes this an over-the-counter product as opposed to a prescription product?
Yeah, great question. So a high-level summary is in order. To kind of not dumb it down. As a gross oversimplification, if you've got a lotion or a cream that you're using, there's basically one of three regulatory classes it's going to fall into. Either a cosmetic, which is the easiest category. You need to abide by some certain, good hygiene standards. You can't be putting filth out there, but the laws around cosmetics aren't very stringent. This is what most, people who sell lotions on farmers markets are going by, but this is also what a lot of the big cosmetic brands go by, these laws. The next level up is over-the-counter drugs. These are basically drugs that use very simple active ingredients that are well established to have safety and efficacy. And as long as you play by the rules of these monographs that the FDA has put out for how to use certain ingredients, you basically just need to play by the rules, but you don't need to file anything with the FDA. The manufacturers do. The manufacturers have frequent facility visits by the FDA, so you need to make sure that your ducks are in a row there. But that's why at a scale like ours, you're working with contract manufacturers. Even when you're getting up to very, very big companies, they're often working with contract manufacturers that specialize in making this stuff, so you don't have to have the capital and regulatory burden of actually running your own manufacturing plant. So that's OTC drugs, and they really range. OTC is a very broad category, almost controversially so, because it ranges from things like antiperspirants, which most people would almost consider a cosmetic product, but technically it does have a physiological effect in that it reduces the amount of sweat coming out of your sweat glands, all the way through to things like Tylenol, which, if you overdose on that, you will literally die. So this is all over-the-counter drugs. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And then you get into prescription drugs. And that's the category which most people, when they think of FDA regulation, that's the category they think of. They're thinking of like phase 1, 2, 3 clinical trials, approvals, millions of dollars of investment. That's not a space we play in. That's not a space we have any interest in playing in right now. Yeah.
So do you say that, even to create a startup, you were very intent on creating something that was an over-the-counter drug?
I think in hindsight, I think we should have made something that was a cosmetic and just sweat absorbing. The whole any regulatory is a headache from issues ranging as simple as the fact that we need to manufacture at these dedicated facilities with these big batch sizes, which really hampered us in the early days from being flexible and just iterating quickly on products post-launch. I think we've made a really good product, but I would love to have the flexibility of being able to constantly change my product if it wasn't an over-the-counter product. It's just, and any regulatory overhead is never something you want to have. So I will say, in hindsight, definitely would have wanted to stay in the cosmetic space, but we're here now, and it's a good product. And obviously, to keep the antiperspirant actives in it, we do legally need to be in the over-the-counter space. But that's something that I think if we were doing this again, we would maybe do a little further down the road once the company had developed a bit and built a customer base a little bit more, because I think the startup costs there were just significant. Yeah. So, to anybody who's wanting to get into the space of consumer products, I'd say definitely see if you can do it in a cosmetic way, and if not, then you might have to do the OTC path. And then definitely, unless you have experience and you're working with people who have done it before, I would strongly encourage avoiding the prescription path.
Yeah. Fair enough. And so it's interesting that you compare it to, or maybe even contrast it, I guess, with software, and how you typically, when you're building software, right, you want to be able to iterate on a product, and that's something that you have to do pre-release, right?
Yeah, which is challenging.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess another aspect that I'm curious about is when you look at other people who are building products at the same timeline as you, or even following you, I guess, how are you able to figure out, what all is out there, and like who else could be even close to what you're building? Like, are you just buying a bunch of competitor lotions and testing them out and saying, okay, this one's trash, this one's good? Like,
yeah, no, that's a great question. I think we definitely always keep an eye on what else is out there. So we're always buying other products, but that goes well beyond antiperspirants. I mean, we buy all sorts of cosmetic and OTC products just to see what other companies are doing with their packaging, their messaging, their actual formulations. And I think we're a lot less competitor focused than many people would assume. I think in categories like this, you actually tend to do better if you focus on your customers and you focus on what they like and why they're choosing you, rather than focusing on one-upping the competition. And it's, I mean, that is a whole nuanced conversation. But on this note of software, I will say, in many ways, I'm kind of jealous of software companies that can constantly iterate on product, and I think they're also in a position where, because of that, they're able to really compete with better products. So to your point about really looking at the competition, I think if you're a software company, you can really be looking at what features competitors are rolling out, seeing how their users are responding, and saying, is this something that we want to clutter our product with? Is it a value add, or is it a detraction? And that is a really, I think that'd be a really fun thing to do, to build a product like that, where we, by contrast, have to do that more with marketing. I do think we're not unlike a hardware company, like a tech hardware company, where they have a physical hardware product that they need to put out there, and they can't make changes to that hardware once it's out there without releasing new versions, but they can change the software or the firmware, right? Yeah. We have a similar, we're in a similar position where our products are out there, but the way we're talking about them with customers, the way we're encouraging people to use them or try them out, we can really adapt that. And I think that's where we might learn the most from customers who are having a good experience, customers who are having a bad experience, even looking at what competitors are doing. And that's where we can kind of continue to iterate, even though the product is already out there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And so when you guys are talking to customers, I imagine obviously a lot of people have been dealing with this issue, more people than you expected when you first started the company.
Yeah, a lot.
And when they come to you, they say, okay, like, I want to try this product, and they try it out. I guess, what % of your time is focused on finding new people who are dealing with these problems versus keeping people who have started buying your products and making sure that they're continuing to buy?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when we came into this, all the advice we were getting was, you need to prove the market here. You need to prove that, this is a very new category. There's not really a lot of hand antiperspirants out there, and you guys are saying the market isn't the hand antiperspirants out there. I mean, this is what we were saying to people. Yeah. We were saying those products are trash. The market is way, way bigger. Nobody's actually addressing the market. And so the correct response that people were giving us was, well, prove it. This was like investors, advisors, mentors, basically. Yeah. If you guys think this is a big market, show that there's demand out there for this product. So we focused very, very heavily on acquisition for our first few years. And I think, honestly, that was to the detriment of customer experience. I think if you bought Carpe a few years ago, you may have had a pretty good experience going to our website, checking out, and then you probably had really, really poor email communication from us afterwards. You may not have known where your order is. You may have been surprised when it finally arrived. It was probably in poor packaging. The instructions on how to use it weren't clear. I mean, this is all really bad stuff. But I think we've had to face it and say, we really need to clean up this customer experience and make a brand that people love and talk about. And I really think we've come a long way in that in the last few months. Yeah. So I will say that's probably been our biggest focus recently is, kind of this idea of going back to we're a company that can still update our software and firmware even though we have a hardware product out there. Previously our mentality was sort of, we've shipped it, now let's just get users. Now our mentality is more, we can keep making this product better even though it's on the market. Yeah. We can make the experience better even if the lotion is the same.
That makes sense. Do you feel like in this space you have to do a lot of education at all presumably to investors or people like that, but even to potential customers about just hyperhidrosis or the idea of sweaty hands in general, or do you find that it's generally well known?
Yeah, I think the education is more about how to use our products, just because when it comes to underarm antiperspirants and deodorants, people already have a routine. They know how to use those things. With a hand antiperspirant, they'll forget to use it because they don't know that you really should be applying it twice daily for best results. You really need to put it on before bed. I think in customer acquisition, we don't really try to talk about hyperhidrosis. Actually, when people search for hyperhidrosis, we want to be on Google and show up because we do help manage the symptoms of hyperhidrosis. But I think the term hyperhidrosis might clinicalize this for some people, where a lot of people do see, and hyperhidrosis itself is an interesting condition. If you look at the research, it's really defined by how much your sweating impacts your quality of life. So there's a lot of people who don't sweat much, but for them it is a big burden, and those people definitely want something to help with that. And there's a lot of people who sweat very excessively, but they don't really mind it, and those people aren't interested in a solution. And I don't want to push a product onto those people if they don't want something, right? Yeah. We're here to help people who really want to reduce their excessive sweat, and I think those people, when they see Carpe, when they see that, hey, there's something that can help with that, they're going to check it out. Yeah, that's basically where we are. And in terms of investors, etc., I think no matter how you explain it, you just need to talk about. You do need to explain customer demand, but that's with any product, right? That's not unique to us.
Right. That makes sense. You talked about how at the beginning. I know both you and David and your other friend Chris. Is that right?
Yeah, Chris Jenks. Yeah,
all of you guys had some experience with science and with chemistry and with the product building side. How did you take on this marketing aspect of things? I know, especially it sounds like in the last couple of years, a lot of the stuff related to customer acquisition is in this marketing piece. Did that come naturally to you, or how did you?
I will say, I think David, my co-founder, is a lot better naturally at marketing and sales. We actually have a very interesting division of responsibility because I'm more of the finance ops guy. I'm, I did physics and computer science, so I'm in college, so I'm a numbers guy. But I also did a lot of filmmaking growing up, so I'm also the creative guy. I have very high standards for writing. I have very high standards for design. There's a lot of things out there under the Carpe brand that I, isn't quite up to my standards, but sometimes we just have to ship. We just have to get something out there. And so I've always done the creative for our ads. I've always filmed all of our TV ads. I've created a lot of our, digital ads. And David would be the one handling the placement of them, working with the agencies that are actually buying the spots to run our TV ads, etc. And I think we just learn from our mentors. I mean, really, success in business, probably success in anything, but I know success in entrepreneurship comes nearly exclusively from the people you're working with. And at the start, that's your co-founder, and as you grow, that's your investors and advisors, and then it's your team, your employees. And I think at every stage you need to kind of learn and open yourself up to that. But I think that's a lesson that just keeps repeating itself to me. I have to learn it oftentimes the hard way, where the focus really needs to be on the people, because every success that we've had in marketing, kind of getting back to your point, when we were coming from a place where we didn't know this much, was because we were working with mentors and advisors who did know how to take a product like ours and actually present it to a wider audience, how to go out there, get eyeballs, get clicks, and start generating sales. And I think we've gotten better at it ourselves right now, David and I have, and our team, but I think it really came from the people we surrounded ourselves with, and we were lucky that they were kind enough to work with us.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know, especially with direct-to-consumer products, the idea of creating a very distinct and unique brand is super important. And you guys have been yeah, I mean, you're doing really well from the revenue side of things, but also with the branding side of things, I feel like I can really distinctly imagine the Carpe, image, and you guys are very active on all sorts of social media, even TikTok recently, as I found out.
Yeah.
I guess out. How do you think about, I guess, like branding in general, and how do you create an idea of your company and have that be attached to the product in people's minds?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I hear a lot about this in entrepreneurship circles. I hear a lot of people speaking about culture and how to create good culture. And I think brand is an interesting analogy to culture, where culture is this interplay between it comes from the team and it comes from the people and it just kind of spontaneously arises, but it also does need to be set from the top if you want to guide it in a good way. There's like this cognitive dissonance in all the conversations around culture where it's like, no, it needs to come from the top, but it doesn't come from the top. It comes from whatever is already happening. I think the same thing with brand, where a successful brand really does need to be defined in some ways by the company and the founders, but it's going to fail miserably unless it actually echoes with the voice of the customer. I don't think we are by any means a good company to learn branding from. I think we're really in the trenches of figuring it out ourselves right now, because this is the first experience David and I have had with it. We haven't launched other companies that have grown into successful brands. I will say Carpe as a brand I think is doing better and better. But I think we figured that out kind of by, really the starting point was basically, we're going to be orange. Like that was the starting point. And some people who don't know brand very well and don't have like a very nuanced understanding of brand, when I'm telling them like, hey, we've had a lot of challenges with refining our brand and making something that really, connects with people. They're like, oh no, your brand's been very consistent and defined for a long time. And I say, what do you mean? They're like, oh, well, it's, that orange, that's very well defined branding. I'm like, yeah, okay, in one sense, in visual identity, we've always been orange, we've always been white. Those have been our two big colors. But I think brand is much more about emotion and feeling and what, a product conveys in that sense. And I think when we started, we just wanted to make a solution for sweaty hands. It was that simple. And we said, hey, here's Carpe, it's a solution to sweaty hands. And what we started hearing from customers was a lot of stories of pain and a lot of stories of hope that Carpe provided to them, and we started realizing this is about more than just a problem solution. This is about creating a brand that actually inspires hope through understanding the pain that people are going through and through sharing stories of other people for whom Carpe has been a big help. And I think it's easy to say that and it's much harder to execute on that, but what I'm trying to kind of illustrate is that has become a focal point of our brand intentionally. That's something that we're starting to really intentionally bring into our communications, our materials, and kind of push from the top. And that really originated from listening to the customers, listening to the entire network of who our brand interacts with.
Yeah, that makes sense. How did you pick the name Carpe?
So there's nothing that special about that name, actually. When David and I were getting started, it was called Clutch. I think our friend Mark Botterill, he's this great British comedian. If you're listening to this in 10 years, I swear he's going to be a famous comedian by then. So you can probably just Google Mark Botterill comedian and he'll be up there. He said, oh, you should call it Clutch because, it's clutch, it comes in clutch, and it's like clutching someone's hand. It'll help you do that because you have dry hands. Yeah. So that's a perfect name. We did a trademark search, which we thought meant Googling, clutch antiperspirant. There's nothing out there. Okay, perfect, it's ours. And then when we started working with Bootstrap, our first big advisors who, I can't reiterate this enough. I should have started with this. It really comes down to the people you're working with, the mentors you have, the advisors you have. I would have been nothing without David in this company. Like, the reason I think this company exists is because David and I found each other. It's not because of the product, it's not because of the problem, it's because we came together and somehow we happen to work very, very, very well together. And I think the second most important thing is that Bootstrap, Benji and Chris, they took an interest in us and they wanted to help us out, because without them, I don't think we would have even made it to product launch. So one of the things they helped us out with was very quickly when we started working with them, they said, have you done a trademark search on Clutch? And we said, yeah, we Googled it. There's nothing out there. And they said, no. Have you done like a USPTO trademark search? And it's very easy. You can do it online, and you can probably learn how to do it better than we had done it with 5 minutes of Googling. But they basically said, no, just figure out how to do it the right way. Turns out there's these international classes or international categories. I think it's international classes of products, and trademarks are assigned within these international classes. And our products are an international class 3, which is basically cosmetics, etc. See, trademarks consider, antiperspirants to be a cosmetic product. And there was a Clutch cologne in that category. So we said, oh no, we have to go back to the drawing board. This was actually a very, very painful moment for us. Particularly for David, who was, I think he was much more attached to the name. He'd kind of been carrying that name for a while. And no joke, when we decided that it's time to, we were literally writing emails back and forth with Abercrombie and Fitch's attorneys about how we could potentially end up using this name. And they were willing to play ball, but they had pretty stringent conditions. And, Ben, Jay, and Chris are saying, what are you guys doing even entertaining this? It's so easy to change the name. And we're saying, no, we have like 100 followers on Facebook. We have so much community buy-in to this name. We can't change the name. That would, torpedo the company. And they finally persuaded us. Thank God. They knew much better than we did. And we workshopped the name for about a month, and Ben, Jay, Chris, David, and me, we are 5 white straight guys. So the names we actually started coming up with after that were Peak, Alpha. Ben seriously proposed the name Money for the product, and then fortunately our friends are a bit more diverse, so we started taking it to our friends. And some women in particular said, that's disgusting. You can't name this product Alpha. Nobody's going to buy it. And we said, oh, maybe you're right. And Mark came back into the scene and he said, hey guys, you know what kind of feels like Clutch, has that same energy, but is different? Carpe. And everybody loved Carpe, and it passed the trademark search, and that is the long and convoluted story of why we are Carpe.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So, obviously, I know you and David, and
we know each other from college entrepreneurship. Actually.
Right. So, do you want to talk a bit about how you guys met each other and how you decided to start a company together?
Yeah, that's a great story. So I think when I came into Duke, so I went to Duke with you.
Yeah.
I think I was a year above you, right? I actually joined this living group that you were into, the Cube, and I joined it. One of the reasons I actually came to Duke is because I thought the entrepreneurship community there was great. And my philosophy with entrepreneurship was, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to start companies. I don't need a huge success right out of the gate, but one day, hopefully, I'm building spaceships. We'll see. But I had this mentality of, I want to work on cool projects with cool people. I want to learn the hard skills of like physics, computer science in a classroom, and I want to learn business in practice. And so I was working on some small projects as a freshman, being inspired by what the people in the Cube were doing around me, but it all kind of fell apart. And it really fell apart because of the people I was working with. And I don't mean to say that, they did anything wrong, but that we just weren't a good team. Mostly, I think it was my problem. I was the problem there, but I didn't lead that team well. And then coming out of the freshman year, the summer after that, I was a Robertson Scholar, which is the Duke UNC cross-campus scholarship. And David, my co-founder, was a UNC Scholar of the same year. And as part of the program, we were living together in New Orleans that summer. And late one night, he basically pulls me aside and he's like, hey, I know you have sweaty hands. Like, I've been thinking about, what if we made something to stop sweaty hands? And I initially said that's a stupid idea. Kind of cutting back to earlier in this interview, where I said it probably a little more positively. I was like, oh yeah, I think we should try some different products. But I said, like, no, nobody's going to buy this. There's not, like, if there's probably something out there that hasn't taken off because there's no demand. And then, turned out David hadn't even looked for other products out there, other over-the-counter antiperspirants. And I think that actually started very quickly illustrating why David and I are such a good team, because I think David will always see a way and he'll always see possibilities in things, and I'll always see the roadblocks, and I'll say, okay, well, first we need to see what's out there, and we tried it and it sucked, and it's like, okay, so here's an opportunity. Actually, maybe the reason that there's not products out there isn't because there's no demand, maybe it's because there's no supply. There's nobody who's done this well. And so that's when we really started working on the formula, and we were working on these internships in New Orleans over the summer. But I remember 2 weeks after we started talking about Carpe, we basically stopped going to our internships. We were just meeting all day in cafes, working on this crazy idea. And, it was still at the time just a project, like a project that we wanted to do. We said it'd be so cool to make this and see if anybody would buy it. It really didn't become the venture we would devote ourselves to until college kept going on, and suddenly we're spending more time on this than we're spending in class. We're not really going to social events. We're just doing this in class and then less class. And then by the time we graduated, Carpe was doing well enough that we could afford to pay ourselves a very basic salary. So we did that, and then we went about raising a seed round. And that's kind of how it grew from this very little idea to a project. And again, that was because it was less so even the idea, but more so that David and I really found that we worked so well together that we never met anybody with whom we worked better than each other. We said we got to stick together on this, because I think, you know, no matter what, we're going to learn how to do something incredible together, and I think we really have.
Yeah.
And it's been an amazing journey, and I can't wait to see what comes next.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I think having that co-founder that you have both a good working relationship with and that trust can really make any company much more successful than it would have been if you're working with somebody who you don't like working with, who you don't have that rapport with, I guess.
Exactly. I think it's it's the romantic relationship analogy. It's basically that. I mean, you know, you need to have all these things that people say about a romantic relationship, like trust and forgiveness and understanding, and you need to have faith that the other person is truly in it for the right reasons. So, you know, even if they slip up, you know, they did it with good intentions. Yeah. But at the same time, there just needs to be chemistry. Yeah. You know, you need to click, and you need to sort of complement each other. And I don't know. I think I'm a hard guy to get along with. I don't think I'm particularly good at making friends, but there was something about David and me where we just clicked like that. And I said, we need to hold on to this, because I don't know if I'm ever going to meet somebody who I work with as good as David. I honestly, I genuinely cannot think of a way that I would improve David right now. And we're 5 years into it. Yeah. So, you know, we have our fights, but I still think he is the perfect co-founder for me. And that's probably the luckiest thing that's ever happened to me, is that I met David. And again, after that, the second luckiest thing is that we met all these advisors who helped us. And the third luckiest thing is that we've met, you know, the team, the people who have started working alongside us on Carpe, our head of operations, head of finance, all our marketing folks, our customer service people. I mean, that is your company. Your company is not your product. To some degree, it may be your community, your customers, but really it's the people who are working on this with you.
Yeah. I really like that. As you know, the name of this podcast is My First Sale, and a lot of the
nice.
The stuff that I like to hear about from entrepreneurs is sort of that idea of their first sale. And I think a lot of times that tends to shift the way you think about a business, because up until then you're working on product, you're working on talking to customers, but you're not actually making anything from it. And as soon as somebody hands you cash for your idea, you know, it almost flips a switch into business. So I was wondering if you remember what that was, or something along that timeline.
Well, first of all, I love that focus. I think, you know, if there's two things that when I'm speaking with budding entrepreneurs I try to get across, is that one thing that I've been talking about is it's all about the people. Don't neglect the people for the product. Don't, you know, choose the perfect idea. If you choose the perfect team, that's what matters more than anything else. And the second thing is get that first sale, because you don't have anything until you have a sale, right? You've got, and you know, there's exceptions to every rule. If you're doing some really hard biotech, you know, 20-year play where it takes 20 years to develop and get the regulatory, et cetera, and then you're going to
prescription drugs.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that might be a bit of an exception, but with most things that people our age are working on, you know, as cool as your idea seems, just get it as simple as possible to get it out there, get people paying for it, because everybody's going to be nice to you and tell you you've got a cool idea until you ask them for money. Yeah. And for us, it was very, very difficult to get to that stage, which is why, you know, I would not advise people who are listening to this to actually go into the space that we went into in terms of OTC drugs, because there is this barrier to entry of needing to do these pretty decent batches, getting a formula stable, getting all this testing done on the formula, etc. But that's what we needed that seed money for, and you know, we were very lucky to find the right partners for that and get that money and get that testing, and even find a good partner in a contract manufacturer that was helping us out at this very, very small scale. And so with all that work and all that money into it, we were finally able to launch on Amazon and on our website on, I think, July 14th of 2015. We went live, but we didn't announce it until July 16th. And I remember that we basically had two strategies for go-to-market. One of the big reasons we launched on Amazon was that there was actually already a lot of search traffic on Amazon for solutions to sweaty hands. There just wasn't anything good out there. And so we started getting sales from that almost immediately after we posted it. You know, the official go live was going to be on the 16th, but I think a couple sales trickled in on the 15th, and we were like, oh, is this real, or is this our family members? And then on the 16th, you know, we had some local press, less so here, but more so in our hometowns, in Utah for me and Atlanta for David, pick up the story and just say, like recent high school graduates from these high schools have developed this lotion to fight sweaty hands. And I remember, I think this was the 16th or the 17th, it was a Saturday, and the PayPal app on my phone just kept getting all these notifications that was like sale, and I was blown away. I was like, wow, we have so much demand. I think we had, 100 sales that first day right out of the gate. Incredible. Which was huge to us. And I remember 3 months in, we had done basically $10,000 in sales in each of the first 3 months, which we thought was, life-changing. We're like, wow, we had no idea this was going to do so well. And that's, we'll do that in a few good hours these days. But it's, don't want to give away too much the scale of our company. But yeah, it's really cool because I think that moment felt bigger than almost any growth we've had since. Because it just validated that, wow, there's people who are actually willing to pay money for something we've created. And for the longest time, I had this feeling of imposter syndrome about it. Weirdly enough, imposter syndrome is something that I heard a lot about in college, where people were saying like, oh, I feel like I don't deserve to be here. I feel like everybody here is smarter than me. I never got that feeling. I think, the computer science classes were pretty easy. The physics classes were brutally hard. I was the dumbest person in the room. But I was arrogant, and I blamed that more on the professors than I was. So I had to watch MIT like open courseware to get through physics. I was like, that's stupid. Why, this is an expensive institution. I should be learning this physics better. But I think I'm too dumb to be good at physics. But anyway, I never had imposter syndrome in college. As soon as we started selling Carpe, I had this horrible feeling of imposter syndrome. I'm like, we've tricked these people. We made this product. This isn't like a real Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson big product. Like, I can't believe, they're spending good money on something that we made without all, these professional marketers and professional designers, etc. And pretty soon you kind of get over that and you realize that's how the world works. That's how all products are made. But it's your first time kind of being behind the curtain. It's a little surreal. Yeah. Because I don't even know how to describe it other than all your life you've been kind of on the consumption side of all these products, and then once you start making them, you realize I can do this. Like, anybody can do this. That shouldn't be allowed.
I bet. I can't even imagine. That's amazing.
So that was a really cool feeling, and it's kind of been a privilege and an honor since then to keep getting these sales. Some days you do take it for granted. Yeah. You have less sales than you expect, and you're like, oh, what's happening? And I think you can never forget that every single sale is somebody who's trusting you, like giving you money to say, help me out with this, help me out with my sweating. And I think that's something that, you got to remember and keep top of mind, that's who you're there for. You're there for your customers. Probably my investors are going to hear this and they're not going to like this. You're not there for your investors. I think if you can make your investors some money along the way, that's really good. The investors need to get paid before you get paid because it's their money. But the customers need to get served before anything else, or else, what's the point? Why you don't want to be creating something out there that's making you money, that's making investors money, if it's not actively helping people. Because I just don't think that's any way to be happy.
Yeah. So you brought up your investors, and you talked a bit about them, bootstrap advisors. So I guess in general, like, how do you think about investment, and like, if you're going to go start up a business, like, do you think that investors are a key part of that, or do you think that you would recommend people go out and seek other forms of?
Yeah, I think it varies so much by the type of company you're at, the stage you're at, and who you are. Today, if David and I were starting a company similar to Carpe, we might be able to pull off bootstrapping it just because of the knowledge we have and the fact that, now that we're not broke college students, we have the few $1,000s we'd need. Literally, we didn't have anything when we were starting this to get anything done. Now we probably have a tiny bit of our own money to start something with. But really the reason we went to bootstrap is because we had no idea how to start a company, and they had the resources, they had the experience, and they had the willingness to help us really launch this. And I don't think we could have gotten it off the ground at all without them. So that I think was particular to our case. If we'd had experience, if we'd done companies similar to this, we wouldn't have needed to partner with them. But they taught us nearly everything we knew for the first few years. And then we sort of started, in a way, maybe not outgrowing them, because they've certainly done companies that are bigger than any stage Carpe's at right now. But Carpe started going into a direction that they maybe were unfamiliar with as we became bigger and more specialized. And then we realized we had to keep growing our advisor network if we had any idea how we were gonna how we were going to keep going. And so during our seed round, we were very fortunate to bring on Seth Radwell, the former CEO of Proactive, who's been a huge help with our marketing ever since. He's been a big leader at our company in terms of guiding us on how to market a product like this. And I think the seed round and the Series A that we've since raised, we've definitely benefited a lot from the advisors we've met in those rounds, and I think our company wouldn't be where it is today without those advisors. But those rounds were more so about actually having money to grow. Our business economics are pretty good. We could have, we definitely needed that bootstrap investment at the start, but after that, the formal seed round, the Series A, which were led by angel networks, we have some small VCs involved, but I don't think our company is a good fit for an aggressive VC because we are a company that can be profitable, that can have EBITDA. We're just, the investment is more about choosing growth rather than a lot of venture capital plays. You need all this money or the company's not going to be able to exist at all.
Yeah.
And so, I'm kind of, I'm not giving this answer the structure that I should be giving it, but basically I think for every level of founder experience, every type of company, every type of industry, you have different needs for investors and advisors. Yeah. And I think there's no one-size-fits-all advice for whether or not you should be seeking investment right now and what type of investment. But,
fair enough.
Yeah, definitely consider VCs, consider angel networks, consider high net worth individuals. Those are all options that you should be aware of.
Yeah, fair enough. I know something that has happened to a lot of entrepreneurs, I would say pretty much all, and definitely me, is that at some point or another, you have a string of bad things happen. You're like, oh my God, everything is crashing and burning. Yeah. If you don't mind, is there a time that comes to mind that you talk about just how or even at a broad level, what happened and how you got out of that mentality and how do you?
Yeah, I think there's so many things over the years. I know very few founders who wouldn't agree with the idea that, especially in the early days, you're usually either thinking like this is definitely going to be $1 billion company or this is definitely going to fail. I think as your company grows and matures, that kind of oscillation window narrows. So right now, there's definitely days where I think, oh, this is going to be huge, and there's days where, I don't know how this is going to work out. But it's no longer everything or nothing. Right now, it's sort of like kind of getting into this more reasonable value threshold. So in the early days where the swings were wild and you just never knew if the company was going to survive another week, I remember when we were still kind of in idea stage, we were prototyping this thing, and we were really plugged into the local startup competition network. And I have, mixed feelings about startup competitions, but I definitely appreciate what they're trying to do in terms of, foster communities and support for small entrepreneurs. And so there was this one at UNC, the Carolina Pitch Party, where it's basically all these local founders working on their ideas. Each one or each team has a table around this big room. Local investors are going around and basically putting these fake dollars into the cups of the teams that they think have good ideas. And there's just so many fake dollars to go around that basically every team should be getting a lot of money. We were getting no dollars that night. All the investors were coming by, listening to our pitch, and just walking away. And the feedback was generally like, nobody's going to want to buy this product. There's not going to be demand. And I remember walking away from that night. That was probably my darkest moment in the early days of Carpe, where we still thought it was, kind of going to be a big project, maybe not the future of our lives. But we were already getting quite serious and quite involved with it, David and I were. And I remember walking out of that gym that night where that was being held, or it was actually like some weird reception hall at the football stadium at UNC, and thinking this is probably it. This is a shit idea. Nobody likes it. We have no demand for this product. Our prototypes aren't going that well. And that night, I remember getting dinner with some alumni actually from the Cube who'd come to visit, and some current members of the Cube, and they basically said, yeah, this is the night you decide whether this is the thing you're going to go all in on or you're moving on to mess around with your next project. And I took it very seriously that night. I remember that dinner fondly and or distinctly, and I remember really giving it some serious thought. Do I want to keep working on this when I have no idea if this is something that people are going to want, and it's going to take us, at that point we knew it was going to take us at least another 9 months before this saw the light of day. And this is college, so every month feels like a very big part of your life. Yeah. And I think it was really the fact that I realized, you know what, maybe we'll pivot, maybe we'll figure this out, but I have so much faith in the relationship I have with David that I need to be all in on whatever we're working on together. And so that night, I think ever since that night, no matter how low it's gotten, it hasn't ever been as, it's never felt as despondent, just because I'm all in. So it's like, all right, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Right. That was the last night that I feel like I had a choice, which is why it was so scary. Because when you still have a choice, you're like, oh no, do I eject or not? And after that, I removed the ejection handles. I'm like, all right, we're riding this thing into the ground no matter what happens. And what do you know? It really started doing well. And that night at that pitch party, actually, one of the associates of Bootstrap Advisors met us at our table, and she shot a note to Benji and Chris about us, and that is the reason we ended up meeting up with them.
Wow.
That night, where we thought nobody was interested in our company, was the reason we got connected with Bootstrap, and Bootstrap is the reason Carpe ever saw the light of day. So
wow,
it's pretty cool.
It's a pretty pivotal night.
Yeah.
So, I mean, now you guys are doing amazingly. You said that you're in CVS and Target nationwide. Is that right?
Yes, we are in CVS and Target nationwide with our hand and foot antiperspirants, and a lot of other retailers interested. But our primary distribution is on our website and on Amazon.
Gotcha. And I guess, how do you think about that difference between in-store and I guess, e-commerce?
Yeah, I think product discovery these days happens much more online. Mm-hmm. But I think for a product like antiperspirants, where you want an immediate answer, you want an immediate solution, you're not going to wait 2 days to stop smelling bad, to stop feeling sweaty. Yeah. You do want the convenience of being able to pick it up in any local retailer. So that's kind of our philosophy for why we slowly started moving into retail, saying, hey, we don't think this is where people are going to find out about Carpe. Some people will, and that's cool. But we think this is ultimately where people will want to buy Carpe. And so far, it's done pretty well. I mean, we're really thankful that CVS and Target took a chance on us, but I think they're seeing pretty good results with how our products are selling.
Cool. So we're gonna do the rapid fire now, and I'm just gonna spit a topic at you and give me your gut reaction on it. Either how it affects you, how it affects your business, how you're thinking about that topic.
Let's go.
All right. Starting a company right out of college.
I would say start it in college. Don't start it right after college when you are you suddenly have potentially huge student loan debt. You have no place to live because you've left your dorm or wherever. In college, you have this very awesome safety net of you kind of have this full-time job of being a student. This will be a side hustle. Nobody's expecting this to succeed. Your life isn't riding on this succeeding, and you have more and more these amazing entrepreneurship networks in colleges and these startup incubators, basically, in many ways. So I would say if you can work on projects in college, try to start something in college. Probably a safer time to do it than when you have kids and a spouse and you need to mortgage your house.
Yeah. Online reviews.
Really good, I think, and they keep us honest. So with Amazon, it's incredibly hard at this point. And when I say incredibly hard, I think it might be impossible, but I'm sure somebody's figured it out, to fake reviews on Amazon. Amazon's gotten really good at policing those. And so since working on Carpe, I've gained much more trust in Amazon reviews, actually, because I know that they're probably pretty accurate. The sellers can't fake them. And also I've seen them as, a really good tool of like capitalist democracy, basically, because you win or die by the actual user perception of your product.
Yeah.
And so we've had periods of bad reviews on Amazon, and I think they really galvanize us into action, into like, okay, we can't let this be happening. Like, let's fix whatever's going on here. I think it keeps you honest. Online reviews, especially the ones that are strictly policed like Amazon reviews, they really keep you honest and make sure that you're making a great product. So I really like them.
Amazon generic products.
Amazon generic products, I think they're overblown, weirdly enough. It's funny. Amazon basics products often have pretty poor reviews on Amazon, which I respect the integrity of Amazon to not faking the reviews, but knowing how devious Amazon is, that's probably like an intentional psychological game they're playing. They're like, you can trust the reviews so much. They're our own products. We're going to be honest about how much they suck. But I don't think they're moving really into categories like our product, knock on wood. I think maybe in like, I think if there's an Amazon Basics version of it, there's already an Alibaba version of it, so just buy it on Alibaba instead.
Fair enough. Selling international.
Selling international. For a while we had this philosophy of we're gonna let the acquirer deal with that. There's all these weird games I think people want to play where it's like, oh, you need to leave something on the table for the acquirer. You need to leave retail on the table so that an acquirer can see like, wow, you're a successful online brand. We're gonna really take you into retail. Oh yeah, that's actually a strategy that might be good. There's a lot of very successful exits like Native, case in point, that kind of had that philosophy and it did quite well for them. So maybe we're wrong for going into retail so early, but I'm thinking no, let's do everything that can bring us success right now, that can bring us customers right now. And I think international is one of those things. We did definitely in the past hold back a little intentionally from international, saying that could be the acquire opportunity. A big multinational will say, okay, this brand's doing well in the States, let's take them international. But I think right now the barriers to entry are dropping all over the world in terms of getting your product out there. And so that's something that we definitely want to keep growing in the next few years.
Selling direct versus resellers?
Always sell direct if you can. I mean, resellers have less and less value in today's world. Resellers generally, that's not to say that anytime there's a middleman, it's a con. Yeah. There's middlemen that you want to work with just because they are bringing expertise or something that you cannot deliver. Yeah. So if you are a solo founder and you don't know how to get into all these retail channels, including online retail channels, like there's a lot of small entrepreneurs who don't want to be bothered running Amazon pages, and maybe they should be selling through an Amazon reseller. But I will say for a company like ours where we can very easily manage our own Amazon presence, and it's not easy to manage an Amazon presence. Actually, there's a lot of stuff involved there. Amazon is kind of difficult to work with, but we would never want to sell on Amazon through a reseller and even on Amazon we prefer to have people coming through our website than Amazon. Amazon is itself a sort of reseller because on the website we own the relationship fully. Yeah. So,
influencers.
I mean, influencers I think are just a name for something, the current name for something that's been out there for a while, which is basically, they're the current version of celebrity. And there's the spectrum from celebrity to your friends, and it's basically a type of word of mouth. Yeah. I think there's definitely in any developing market, there's some shitty things that happen. I generally don't like paid influencers much because it feels disingenuous to me that these people are basically sharing their lives and sharing their preferences with people who think they're getting exposed to the genuine preferences of somebody, and instead it's kind of all an advertisement, and I don't like hitting advertisements. I think they're a little unethical, but yeah, I just see them as another type of word of mouth.
Makes sense. Shopify or other e-commerce platforms?
We went custom initially because Shopify at the time was not well designed for a single product experience, and there have been huge benefits to being as custom as we are in terms of things we can test and new things we can implement. But the workload to maintain a custom site, to make everything run in a basic functional way is way too high, and we actually will probably be moving to Shopify even as we scale. Shopify is something you think you launch on and then you grow into custom. We've been custom and we're probably going to grow into Shopify.
Wow, interesting. Yeah. Vaseline or like Neutrogena or other big brands like J&J, P&G.
Yeah.
Lotions.
What about them? I mean, we're not competing with lotions, right? Yeah, like we're competing with antiperspirants. Yeah. But I think you need to find, when you're saying, earlier you mentioned being very having your, what's the word, ear to the ground, ear to the wind. I'm forgetting my idioms right now. I'm getting tired. But listening to your competitors, seeing what they're putting out there. I think with your peers, it's a little less important to be reactive to what they're doing because you guys are all growing so fast. It's more important to focus on what you think is going to deliver the greatest value to your customer. I think when it comes to the big established giants, you definitely want to look at what they're doing and kind of see what they might be missing. So I think we've done a bit of that. I think we cater to needs that the big brands haven't answered, and that's, in simplest terms, our relationship with the big brands. And I think as a small company, we're probably a bit more agile than they are. Yeah. So, I think we can keep catering to needs that is they're a little less suited to respond to.
SEO?
Really important. I mean, it's. But one thing that I think trips people up on SEO is where you need to SEO changes every decade, if not more frequently, and it varies by industry. When you hear SEO, I don't know, my mind immediately jumps to Google. I think most people's mind jumps to like, oh, SEO, that means Google search, right? Yeah. I think the SEO that mattered far more for Carpe, especially in its early days, was Amazon SEO. Yeah. And I think these days, Instagram, TikTok SEO might be very important for some brands.
Yeah, that makes sense. Duke's Entrepreneurship Network.
I am very, very grateful to be part of, a community like that. One of the reasons I did come to Duke is because I felt that they have a really good entrepreneurship ecosystem. And in terms of, I could get into thinking about how the network could be better deployed, etc. Yeah. At this point, I almost want to say I don't even see Duke's network anymore because we're so entwined with the Triangle network and the UNC network and the Duke network, and I all kind of see it as one mesh. But I think that Duke network was the launch pad to getting into this broader entrepreneurship community that we're lucky enough to be part of now as, the founders of Carpe. Yeah. So I'm very grateful that it's there.
D2C exits.
I think D2C is pretty broad. Weirdly enough, in consumer goods, I actually think exits haven't been that unhealthy. I think, you look at the $100 million acquisition of Native by P&G, which I'm going to keep going back to just because it's a fun comparable for us. They had good EBITDA. They're a profitable business. I think they were acquired for a reasonable price in a way that could actually bolster P&G's business. They needed a brand. Yeah. Like I said, the incumbents aren't very agile to responding to new customer needs. They generally work through acquisition. Yeah. So I think in these consumer product goods spaces, or consumer packaged goods, there's a lot of healthy acquisitions. I think in the broader DNVB ecosystem, where you're seeing brands like Kasper, which appropriated my name, so I don't like them, and they're trying to IPO with negative user economics. What is this? I know. And the thing is, I fundamentally don't believe in the long-term viability of Kasper, where they're saying they're like a sleep tech company. No, 8 Sleep is a sleep tech company. You guys were the first company that managed to lose money on mattresses. That's your claim to fame. Stick with that. So I don't know. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. But you look at that, you look at I guess these aren't consumer D2C examples, but actually no, there was a lot of hype in the past about these meal kits, etc. Yeah. You're almost forgetting that now because all the big busts of late are like WeWork and Uber. Yeah. But there's just way too much hype on negative user economics, and that should never be. And I think we're already learning our lesson in tech, where even in a tech company like Uber, the negative user economics are going to catch up with you, and WeWork, and it's you're not going to be everything that you thought you could be, even though you could be. Those companies will continue to exist as pretty successful companies. They're not, they're like a tenth of the valuation that they used to be. Yeah. I know for WeWork, I think for Uber, right? Yeah. Uber definitely wasn't what it was going to be. But the bigger danger is when that bleeds, that tech valuation mentality bleeds into consumer goods, where EBITDA is super possible. You can totally be running a sustainable business and making a profit and having positive user economics, especially when you're trading hard goods. And so I think if investors and entrepreneurs keep letting that mentality of who needs profit when you can just keep burning money and growing, that's going to lead to situations like these, these meal kit companies collapsing, and Kasper, and the jury's out on Kasper, so we'll see where it goes. But I don't see that ending very well, because I don't think that's sustainable.
Yeah. Best smell for products like yours?
Oh, well, we like eucalyptus. Carpe smells like eucalyptus. It's just medical enough to feel like, hey, this is something that I can trust, but it's also fresh, gender neutral. I'm a big fan of gender neutral. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are coming around to that. Just smell like something fresh and clean and natural.
Worst smell?
Well, you don't want to smell like, I don't know, sewage.
Worst popular smell, maybe.
Worst popular smell? Ooh, that's good. Nobody actually wears licorice smells, right? That might be a thing. I don't know. I like smells. I really like strong colognes. I don't trust myself in determining the scents for our products because I am way too open to strong smells. But we have this security guard in our building. Don't want to call him out if he's listening, but basically one of our employees says that she can smell where he's been for the last 10 minutes, because he does the rounds through the building, he's like, if he's been in this spot at any point in the last 10 minutes, I can smell it and I gag. And I can smell it too, but I love the scent. This is delightful. I wish more people wore cologne. I don't, but I just love smells.
What inspires you?
I think people who are fundamentally changing what humanity's capable of. So, I mean, this is the answer I think everybody gives, but I think Elon Musk is super inspirational. Yeah. Particularly with SpaceX, like landing orbital class rockets. I think everybody was impressed by that, but I don't think we're nearly impressed enough by that. Like, you're landing orbital class rockets. I think this guy's gonna genuinely build these spaceships that go to Mars. That's insane. We should have been doing that decades ago, but we just need people like that who are really setting the sights so high and not just trying to make a better financial product or, frankly, a better deodorant. Like, sometimes I feel like what we're working on might not be ambitious enough, although I do think we're creating something that hasn't been out there before. We're really helping people. I think that's what matters, is creating something that hasn't been done before, and not just building a better mousetrap.
Yeah. Where should people find you?
I'm trying to do Twitter now, so you can follow me at, I think, just Kasper Kubica on Twitter. But yeah, this podcast doesn't have very huge circulation, so I feel unafraid to say this. If you really want to talk to me, it's pretty easy to figure out my email address. Just guess what my email address would be based on our company website and my first name, and you will probably guess correct.
And where should they find the company?
mycarpe.com, mycarpe.com. Carpe like Carpe Diem, and mycarpe because carpe.com is owned by some fintech company. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for interviewing me. I hope I haven't been too boring, and I've had a lot of fun.
That was amazing. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions, any suggestions, or if you or someone else you know would like to be on the next episode. And if you're thinking about starting a business, what are you waiting for? Do it already.